I'm WSB legal analyst Phil Holloway. I'm joined today by my guest, Amanda Timpson, a former employee of the Fulton County District Attorney's Office and someone who has been recently described in media reports as a whistleblower, along with her attorney, Mario Williams. Before we get into Amanda's story, let me set the stage and explain why what she has to say may be relevant to the recent allegations of corruption and conflict of interest made against Fulton DA Fani Willis. Ms. Willis, of course, has indicted the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, and several other people in a massive racketeering case that involves claims of post-election malfeasance. A co-defendant in that case, named Michael Roman, through his attorney, has filed a bombshell motion which seeks to dismiss the entire indictment. As a basis for that motion, Mr. Roman alleges that the district attorney, Fani Willis, had an affair, a romantic relationship with her special prosecutor, which is a private lawyer that's paid under contract. His name is Nathan Wade. So Roman's motion says that Willis gave Wade this very lucrative no-bid contract, paying him with taxpayer dollars. And as of the date of the filing of the motion, it was in excess of $600,000 to be more precise. And Roman goes on to say that Willis has personally benefited from the tax money paid to Wade by her having converted it to her own personal benefit by having her lover pay for expensive travel vacation, among other things. In the wake of this explosive allegation, the Fulton DA has come under intense scrutiny on how she spends tax money, not only state tax money, but how she spends federal tax money that she gets in the form of federal grants. As of right now, she's being looked at and investigated by the Board of Commissioners in Fulton County, the Georgia Senate. The defendants, of course, in the criminal case are looking very closely at Ms. Willis in terms of how she spent tax money with an eye towards exposing any personal or political bias that she may have in bringing these charges. But most recently, Ms. Willis was served with a congressional subpoena to produce documents to the House Judiciary Committee related to claims made by my guest, Amanda Timpson. For now, the House Judiciary Committee is seeking documents related to and I quote, a $488,000 federal grant earmarked for the creation of a Center of Youth Empowerment and Gang Prevention. The subpoena goes on to say that they are looking into whether the money was actually spent on frivolous, unrelated type expenditures, which is what my guest is here to talk about. So, Amanda, thanks to both of you guys, by the way, for being with me today. Before we get into the information that you may have related to the federal grants, tell us how you came to work for the Fulton DA's office.
I was hired by Paul Howard in 2018 as the Director of Gang Prevention and Intervention. And so in that role, I was tasked with hopefully preventing and interventing criminal street gang activities as it related to youth within Fulton counties, creating prevention and intervention and diversion programs for the office.
And of course, Paul Howard is the former DA who the current DA, Ms. Willis, she defeated him in the last election. Is that right?
That is correct.
The things that you worked on in the Howard administration, how were those things funded?
A lot of them were funded by within the general fund, but under the Howard administration is when myself and two of my colleagues co-wrote this OJJDP grant that we're speaking about today. So it was actually written while Mr. Howard Paul Howard was still the district attorney.
Correct me if I'm wrong. When you apply for a federal grant, when you say you wrote that, you're talking about you wrote the application. Is that right?
Correct.
And you have to put in there specifically how you're going to spend the money. Is that fair?
And this grant, this was my first grant co-writing, but I've overseen and been a part of several grant applications and reporting. And this was probably the most specific grant that I've ever been a part of. It was for youth 12 to 17 specifically. The programming was supposed to be housed out of a center that was donated to the DA's office located in Southwest Atlanta. And not only was it for youth 12 to 17 who were gang involved, but it was very specific, correlating the known active gangs to the zip codes and the youth in those specific zip codes. So it was very specific.
All right, so it was for Fulton County, and it was to be located in Fulton County. And here we are in February of 2024. Does that center even exist physically?
Physically, the center does not exist. It's still
So the money that
abandoned.
was supposed to be going to build the center hasn't been used to build the center. Is that fair?
Well, let me be clear. The money was not to build the center. It was to operate programming out of the center. And so obviously as a part of it, the center would have to be erected, obviously. But the center was not only to do gang prevention, it was also for trades, for therapeutic support and other supportive services for our youth that may also be in gangs.
All right. And so it wasn't, according to what I hear you telling me, it wasn't used. The center is non-existent. The money was provided to the DA's office, but as of yet, there's been nothing created in terms of that center.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Now you've, and of course, your attorney, Mr. Williams, either one of you feel free to chime in on this, because I want to understand. You have filed whistleblower litigation. You filed a lawsuit against Miss Willis for blowing the whistle. I guess you were blowing the whistle on this specific issue, the non-use of the taxpayer money as it was designed. Is that right?
Well, I'll chime in on this. So, what happened here was it's not just the OJJDP grant. So, with the lawsuit is kind of expansive, and it has, like, I would say, two significant principal temporal timing periods. One issue is when Amanda was in this position as a director, she's reporting to a guy named Cuffey with the last name Cuffey, and she's saying, hey, look, he's trying to spend money on computers and things that Amanda, having been a part and a co-author of the grant, says, hey, look, you can't do this. So she's trying to steadily get a sit down with Miss Willis, District Attorney Willis, about this person's behavior. So at that time, when she persists on trying to get a sit down because she's saying, hey, look, this guy's trying to use money for what it's not intended for, the grant prohibits it on top of that. She writes some text messages to, I guess, one of a high-ranking official in Fani's staff. And the text message is real clear. Like, that's what's so disconcerting about accusations that everything's frivolous, she's a disgruntled employee, because there's so much documentation. So the text messages are very clear. Hey, look, at this point, based on this guy's conduct, there are multiple lawsuits that I personally can file. She gets called into the office and she gets her whole position and rank, title, everything taken away. So that's one thing about the OJJDP grant. The other issue is about the junior DA program. Because at the same time that this OJJDP grant is going on and they're trying to float her around to different positions, she's saying, hey, look, the junior DA, and this, like I said, this is very easy to prove that this is not being made up. This is not her word against her word. This is just, we have corroborating independent evidence. The way
let me pause you for a second. So if you move, what is the junior DA program? Because that sounds like something that's different from the gang center. Okay, what is the junior DA program? Is that something that's also federally grant funded?
You can explain it, Amanda, what it is.
Yes, it's funded by a JAG grant that's given to the state, and then given to the counties, and then the county commissioners give it to different pots of need. And for the DA's office, it funds the junior DA program, and the junior DA program is a prevention program for youth in high school and middle school that bridges the gap between community and law enforcement, essentially. And it is it's a crime prevention program.
Who
And so
gets to participate in this program?
middle and lower high school students in Fulton County. So that would be Atlanta Public Schools and Fulton County Schools.
Okay. So only Fulton County.
That's right. And here's that. This is the sticking point. And I feel this is the problem for the administration. You just go to the website. We have the documents, Fulton County only. So this is not meant, the Fulton County commissioners and the Fulton County government did not give this money given to Fulton County to go fund people even from other counties. DeKalb County, for example, it says Fulton County residents, students only. So, and I had a deposition about this, and if it comes down to it, I'll turn these depositions over because the manner in which a particular witness tried to interpret Fulton County only is a joke. But it says Fulton County only, and the issue is Amanda was saying, hey, look, well, we got people from different states, Florida, Michigan, and they all seem connected to Miss Willis, DA Willis.
All right, so let me pause. I don't mean to keep cutting you off, but I want to make sure we put a fine point on this. So we have, according to what you guys are saying, we've got people that aren't supposed to be participating because they're not from Fulton County. This is federal money that's funding this, and it's supposed to be Fulton County kids, but we have out-of-staters that have some personal connection to Fani Willis that are coming down and making use of these federal funds by participating. Is that right?
That's right. We have out-of-staters, some with a personal connection to Fani, some with personal connections to other people. But the point is that they're not Fulton County children.
So now we've talked about at least 2 federal grants that you're blowing the whistle about. By the way, I want to back up. Amanda, so you stayed on for Fulton County at the DA's office when the administration changed over from Paul Howard to Fani Willis. How was it that you kept your job? I think you might be muted. Can you unmute?
Yep. Sorry
Let's
about
try
that.
again. Go ahead. Yep.
All right. In early November of 2020, Miss Willis sent out a mass email to all current employees of the DA's office under Paul Howard saying, it's a new year, a new administration, and each of you will be given a guaranteed interview if you wish to apply for the new administration. She attached her organizational chart to that email, and we were able to reapply, and we were all given a interview. Not all of us were given a job. I interviewed on November 20th of 2020 in front of a 9-person panel of Miss Willis's most highest ranking trusted friends, I guess. And on December 9th, I was given my invitation to be a part of her administration. So
and was it in the same job? The same job?
No, because when she came into the office, she actually abolished the gang prevention unit. So the unit in which I led previously no longer existed. So I applied for the director of juvenile diversion, and that's the role that I interviewed for and ultimately got. There were several other individuals that I know personally that applied for the same position, and ultimately those 9 people felt that I was the right person for that job. So the idea that I was a holdover is absolutely disingenuous.
Okay, so let's fast forward to the whistleblowing when you brought this to the attention of the district attorney, Fani Willis. Approximately when was that, and how did that come up? And this is to either one of you, however you want to answer it.
Well, I'll answer it. So, and this is where interviews get a little tricky because they're memory based. And so I just really want to rely on the complaint. The OJJDP issue was constantly from, I would say, May through the time that she had her job taken away, was constantly brought to the attention of staff members, high-ranking staff members, chief of staff of Fani Willis, and I believe Amanda did try to reach directly out to Fani Willis through an email. Now, the issue with the junior DA program is the same, but then it was directly stated, and it was either November, December, I can't remember the exact date, but it was directly stated in a meeting that was recorded with Fani Willis. And it's interesting. Employers sometimes don't like it when employees record them. The problem is when you're dealing with government, especially government officials. This is sad to say. I was an elected official too. If you don't have a recording, especially if you're dealing with law enforcement, also, then you're going to be the one stuck out because people are going to make it a he say, she say thing, but we don't have that here. Ms. Timpson has a recording where she absolutely expresses her concerns once again about the inappropriate misappropriation use of funds. I mean, it's just really a straightforward situation, and that's what makes it so uncomfortable and also untrue to say she's just a disgruntled employee.
All right. Well, what happened then? I guess this is what your lawsuit's about. What happened after you brought this to the attention of Fani Willis?
Well, the first time and I'll let her speak after I say this, the first time she brought it to the attention and she actually put in a text message that there are multiple lawsuits that could be filed, she was given an entirely different, you're talking about somebody that was the director of juvenile diversion, was given a piece of paper that said, you're a part of my executive staff. And then that was just stripped from her. And she was put under the direct report of three different people eventually, one immediately, and then three different people, and not able to use her skill set at all. That happened.
So she got demoted.
Oh, absolutely.
And how soon after raising this with DA Willis did she get demoted?
In the same meeting, in the second, I was cut off in the middle of my sentence. Yes, I was cut off in the middle of my sentence and told effective immediately, you are demoted to the role of file clerk. And so
you went from being on the executive staff, so to speak, to being a file clerk because you said, look, I don't think we're using the federal money right.
Correct.
Well, what I would say to that, I hate to cut it off, is not just because she said we're not using the federal money right, because Amanda was persistent about it. See, that's what gets you in trouble in government situations and even private sector. You might say something one time and somebody might say, hey, check yourself. Amanda kept doing it. And
well, why did she keep, let me talk about that. So why would she feel it was so important to be so persistent and to keep raising the issue?
I'm very passionate about the work that I do. I have worked with justice involved youth and for 15 years. And I knew that I wouldn't be the person that I believe that I am if I allowed something like that to happen. I do have a high moral compass, I would say. And these are youth that are 12 to 17 who are vulnerable, who need these resources. And I don't think that it's our right to use them in any other way than they're supposed to be used.
Well, we hadn't really talked about this. How, if they weren't used for the purposes that they were intended, we did talk about this with the junior DAs, but with the gang center, how was the money being used if it wasn't being used right?
Well, I can say how it was said it was going to be used. Ultimately, I was taken off of obviously I was demoted, so I no longer had access to certain things.
Okay. What did they tell you then? How did they tell you they were going to spend the federal money for the gang center?
Specifically, Michael Cuffey said numerous times that he was going to use a portion of it for a Mac computer lab consisting of 24 Mac computers. He also wanted to use it for travel, and he also
Who's
wanted
travel? Wait a minute, who's travel?
He just said travel. He wasn't very specific about that. He was just saying travel within the programs department. Essentially, that's what I received from it. And swag. So there was a lot of rebranding going on in the office, logos and all this. It was very important to them. And so, obviously mugs and all these things, they cost money.
We're talking about Fani Willis DA mugs and Fani Willis DA swag.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And the computers, the Mac computers, was this for use at the DA's office?
I honestly cannot say. He just kept saying a Mac computer lab. I did see that in his rebuttal in the recent article. He said that he wanted to do it for the center, I guess. That was never conveyed to me, But even if it was for the center, the grant explicitly says 0 on the line where it says equipment. It doesn't allow for any equipment. So
Okay.
even if he says that that was the use, it still wouldn't have been.
All right. So even if it was to be used for the center that doesn't actually exist because it was never put together and stood up, it could not have been used for that purpose because it was not specifically allowed for in the grant.
Exactly.
I got you.
And
So let me fast forward to.
Let me say something about that though. The fact that he got up and told a reporter that he was going to try to use the grant money for the actual center itself, he was actually, think about this now, he's running the program. And he has a fundamental misunderstanding because he's not reading anything and he's not listening to Amanda as she's telling him, don't do it, as the co-author of the grant. It just goes to show he just has zero understanding and zero care for how the money's supposed to be spent. Go ahead.
Well, Amanda I want to get to this part. She was eventually fired. We talked about the demotion to file clerk, but at some point you were fired. What happened?
Well, there's several, it's such a long, voluminous story, but there are several different things that happened. One of which is upon my demotion, I was placed in an area of the building as a, I guess, part of my demotion, but retribution, I guess. I was put in a place in the building that was being remodeled. And I voiced to them several times, I have a pre-existing disease. I have reactive airways disease and asthma, which causes me to have chronic bronchitis and asthma attacks. So I asked for an accommodation that was not honored. Ultimately, in conjunction with my whistleblowing and the fact that I continued to get sick and was not granted a reasonable accommodation, I ultimately escalated my issues to the county attorney and to the DCRC, which is the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights Compliance. The morning of the 14th, the day that I was fired, I had a meeting with one of my supervisors, stemming from an email that I sent about my health. And in that email or in that meeting, I ended up vulnerably sharing what was going on with me and the retaliation in the office. And, I asked her, she's an attorney. I asked her both as my supervisor and as a BARD attorney, I need your confidentiality. And she said, absolutely. So I felt comfortable in that moment, speaking with her. And then immediately following, I already had a pre-existing appointment with the director of the DCRC. And so I went to my meeting with the director of the DCRC. I gave her my documents related to my formal complaint against Fani Willis and her administration, both in regards to the whistleblower and in regards to my reasonable accommodation. And upon leaving that meeting, I was fired about 20 minutes later.
But this
And is it true that they escorted you out of the building with armed police officers or investigators?
Yes. The office investigators. So obviously
These are Fulton County DA investigators who are peace officers and they're armed. And how many was it that escorted you out of the building? 7 of them. All right. And so that was how many weeks after the demotion, roughly?
Roughly from the demotion. The demotion happened on July 26th, and I was fired January 14th.
Let me say this to you about that. And this is why I said there's 2 time periods. So it's not about how many weeks it is from the demotion. It's how many weeks was it from the time she met with Fani Willis and said, look, I'm trying to tell you that this is a misappropriation of funds.
So how many weeks do you think it was roughly?
That was within 30 to 40 days.
All right. So it was a relatively short period of time. Okay. Well, you understand this lawyer that you say you talked to there in this sort of final process, that wasn't your lawyer, but this was a lawyer that was telling you that you could get confidentiality. I mean, I'm talking to you right now. I'm a lawyer, but this is not confidential because I'm not your lawyer.
I know,
right. And unfortunately, I was ill-advised in that regard. I mean, I just assumed because she was an attorney.
I mean, my point is you have somebody who's an attorney telling you that what you're saying to them is confidential, except they work for somebody else who is the boss who's about to fire you.
Yes.
Does that strike you as a conflict of interest there?
It does, but
Yeah.
I have, since found out that, obviously she was brought in by Fani. Her loyalty is to Fani, so I do understand that.
Yeah, but if her
However,
loyalty is to Fani, she shouldn't be telling you that you can have a confidential conversation with her, right? That's my point. You
absolutely,
agree with that?
absolutely.
Let me get to this real quick. I've got a copy of a statement that was given by Fani Willis to the news media, and I won't read the whole thing, but it says, among other things, these false allegations are included in baseless litigation filed by a holdover employee from the previous administration who was terminated for cause. And it goes on to say, we are proud of our grant programs and our partnership with the Department of Justice that makes Fulton County a safer, more just place. And it also says our federal grant funded sexual assault kit initiative has been cited by the U.S. Attorney as a model program. I understand you don't know anything personally about the allegations related to the uh, sexual assault kit backlog grant, but how do you respond to that's another issue, I guess, that came out in the media, and we'll have to wait and see what goes with that. But what is your response to her statement that you are that this is baseless allegations made by a disgruntled holdover employee? How do you respond to that?
Well, I'm going to let Amanda respond, but I first want to take some
Yeah,
exception to this. First of all, the holdover, as you saw with Amanda said recently, she interviewed for the job in front of a whole panel. Fani selected her out of multiple competitors. So it's not a situation where, oh, you're already, and she got rid of the program Paul had and put a new program in place. So this is not a situation where you say, oh, you were with Paul. I don't have any reason to distrust or not believe in your ability. So I'm just going to hold you over and let you stay in that same position. No, she got rid of that situation, created a new position, interviewed for it through an entire panel. So it's not a holdover. She selected Amanda to be a part of her executive staff. Number two, like I said, now that the Congress is involved, the House Judiciary Committee is involved, well, now all that means to me is that we're about to see a bunch of evidence.
yeah.
So to say that something's baseless, well, that's going to be contradicted by all the letters, evidence, audio recordings. That can only last for so long. And look, Fani, I don't have anything against Fani, but let's think about something. I just want to make this point because that was an insult to Amanda. It was first basically denied by silence that there was no relationship between her and this guy. Now, you know what made that come to light? Because he was in the middle of a divorce proceeding and he was about to be deposed, and suddenly his divorce proceeding settled. So then suddenly I just saw an article where she has to admit that she had a relationship with him. Now we're debating on the timing of it. So a lot of things coming out of this administration just aren't accurate.
Yeah, she said that as far as the timing of that, in the couple of minutes that we have left before we got to go, she says the timing of that was that the personal relationship began only in 2020, but not when she gave him the contract. The attorney for Michael Roman has said, that's not true. We're going to present evidence that the relationship it existed prior to him getting that contract. So we'll have to see where that goes, because I imagine that if people do have information to the contrary, we may hear from them under oath. Amanda, listen, I want to give you the last word. I want to hear what your reaction is to being called a baseless in terms of your allegations and being a disgruntled former employee.
To that, I say that I first raised these, not allegations to me because I was there, but I first raised these concerns when I was an active member of her executive leadership team. I had everything to lose and I was not disgruntled. In fact, I fought for months to get in front of her to tell her, because I believed in her and her willingness to change what was going on in the office. And I believed that she needed to know. That is why I was so passionate on the audio recording, was because I believed that she didn't know for a lot of time. And then when the audio recording was actually the second time I had told her, but I was so passionate because all of the things that had happened already, I still wasn't disgruntled. I just wanted it to be fixed, and I wanted to vindicate my name because I did it simply because I knew that the youth of Fulton County deserved the resources that were given to them.
Well, thank you both for coming on. I got to leave it there. I really appreciate your time, and maybe we'll pick up with chapter 2 to see how things go with the litigation. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks.